Okay, so I know we pushed off the tone last time, but I think I have to push it off again. We'll see how much time we have left over. But sorry. Okay, I knew this was going to happen. So we just got the news that Rabbi Moskowitz can't do dialysis anymore, which means he's probably gonna die within the next couple of days. So I wanted to address it. I wanted to address that both because it's on my mind, and I'm not gonna be able to think about Yerushalayim. No offense to Yerushalayim. And I think this also is a continuation of what we did last time. Yeah, and got to teach. And I don't know if I've gone over this idea before, but I thought I would just talk about I don't know if this is a radical idea that I have about being mispalel for a chole, but I want to share my thoughts on a Rambam and being mispalel for a chole. The Rambam says in Hilchos Tefilah Vav Beis, mispalel imat tzibor, someone who davens with a community, lo yarach b'tefilah so yes midai, should not prolong his tefilah more than necessary. Aval beino levin atzmo harshus biado. Sorry, I'll get through this. So you shouldn't daven excessively when you're with a tzibor, but when you're by yourself, then you could daven as long as you want. Im ba lomar achar tefilaso v'afilu k'seder video yom kippurim. Even if after your tefilah you want to say as long as the seder of the video yom kippurim omer, then you could say that. And if you want to add to the middle of the brachos, you could do that. Okay, so here's the case. Ketzad, how so? Haylo chole, if there's someone who is sick that you have, mavakish alav rachamim b'birkas kolin kfi tachas l'shono. You should request for rachamim, for mercy, in the bracha of the sick, according to your eloquence. Hayatzarach lefarnasa, if you need livelihood, mosif tchina ubakasha b'birkas hashanim. Then you should increase your supplication and bakasha in the blessing over years. And this is same thing for all the other brachos. If you want to ask for all your needs in Shemei Tefilah, Shoal, then you can ask. But you can't ask in the first three or the last three. Okay, so I don't know if this is being too medayik, okay, but you notice what do we usually ask for a chole in our tefillas? Refuah, right? So notice the Ram doesn't say that, right? He says mavakish alav rachamin the birkas kolim kvi tachas l'shana, right? So you could say that he means you ask for refuah, right? And you could even bring a proof from later on when it says that in birkas hashanim, if you need parnasa, he doesn't say you ask for parnasa. He just says mostly tchina v'kasha. Now that doesn't even identify the content of what you're saying, so it's not necessarily proof. Okay. So I've been thinking a lot about this, especially with Rabbi Moskowitz's situation, because I don't know the exact nature of his, his particular maladies, but like he's had these, he had kidney failure and he's been on dialysis, every other day for years now. And it's not something that gets better, right? And it can only get worse as it did. Again, I don't know if I just said this, but we found out 3 hours ago. So 3 hours ago, I don't know when they got the news, but that's when the news was public. So here's my thought. Okay, my thought. Well, and there's also another problem. Hold on a second. Let me see if I just put this together in the last 10 minutes. So the other problem, it's not intrinsically a problem, but when you ask for refuah, so the one question is, what do you do if there is no refuah, right? And the other question is like, how do you make that judgment call, right? Because there is such a thing as tefilah shav, right? And tefilah shav is tefilah in vain, right? So the halachot tefilah shav, just go through that without going to the whole sugya. Oops, this is the wrong thing. Hold on. Okay, so tefilah shav. I always forgot what parak it's in.
That like when he counts his grain already and he ovens for there to be more.
Yeah. So let me just find it in the Rambam though. Actually, I wonder. It is in the Rambam, I think.
It's a Mishnah.
Yeah, it is a Mishnah. Yeah, maybe I should just go to the Mishnah. Do you happen to know where it is?
Yeah, first Mishnah in Parakes of Brachos.
Okay.
I only know that because Ezra and I accidentally did it instead of the
Okay, it's a good one to accidentally do. Sorry, just say one more time. That's that long one in Brachos, Parakes.
It's one in the Mishnah.
Yeah.
It's 5.
Okay.
Different ones.
Shav. Yeah. Okay. So bana by. Okay, that's not it. Hariz. Yeah. All right. Here we go. Hatsoik l'sha'avar. So if you cry out for something that is already transpired, harizo tefilah shav. Then that's a tefilah in vain. Okay. And the reason why is because God can't change the past. If you want elaboration on that, then listen to Pesach shiur recently. Is that what you said?
Me?
On Sefer Ikarim? About didn't we just talk about this? God doing the impossible? Yeah.
The impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure that.
Okay,
Right.
Right.
That's what I thought you were going with.
Okay, yeah. So Ketzad. Okay, so what would be an example though? So it doesn't give that example. What would be an example of tefilah shav? So it gives 2 examples. Haisa ishtamu bera. So if your wife is pregnant, v'amar yiratan shetelet ishti zachar, and you say, may it be God's will that my wife give birth to a male, harizo tefilah shav. So then that is a tefilah shav. Because the presumption is that the gender is already set, right? And the Gemara goes through seeming exceptions to that, okay, etc. All right, that's a sugya. This is the classic case. If you're traveling and you hear an outcry in the city, and you hear like some contemporary example is like you see the fire trucks like right, going towards a certain house, and you say, may it be God's will that this is not my household members. So then that is a tefilah in vain because the house is already burning or whatever. So whoever it is. You could daven for the future that the people not be harmed, but you can't change what already happened. Yeah. And then there's this weird case, hanichnas lekrach. No, sorry, that's a different case. Sorry, that's not a Nicholas Lemogron. Okay, so there are other cases that are brought down by the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, but the main principle is that you can only daven for the future. You can't daven for the past. And the reason why you can't daven for the past, it's not an arbitrary rule. It's that the past is impossible to change, and you're not allowed to daven for something that's impossible. Okay. Again, if you go through the sugya, there are questions about what types of miracles are you allowed to daven for and what type you're not. And maybe we have time, we can look into that. But the other issue that you run into in being mispala for a chole, especially one who has a condition that is seemingly without remedy, so there are cases of miracle cures, right? But let's just take an example. If a person got their arm cut off, it'd be usher to daven, I think, for their arm to just sprout back. That just doesn't happen, okay? And if you say it's an open miracle, that's, again, if you go through the Gemaras, then you're not allowed to daven for an open miracle according to, I'll try to substantiate that afterwards. I want to get these thoughts out right now, okay? So this is the other question. So again, the question is when you're davening for someone who's sick, who can't get better, then the question is like, do you still daven for refuah? And like, also, how do you navigate the issue of tefilah shav? Okay, so this is my theory. My theory is when the Rambam says daven for rachamim, then he means daven for rachamim. Okay, and rachamim can take many forms. Okay, rachamim can take the form of refuah. Okay, and so you're not excluding refuah from this, and you're not excluding a miraculous hashgachic intervention, but rachamim does not have to take that form. Okay, rachamim can be an ease of suffering. Rachamim can even be a quick death. Now, how do we know that? Because of what we learned on last night, which was, well, really it was the shiur from last night, but from part 2 of Tosfos. Yeah, so the Ravanel, so we were doing the Ravanel on Kares, okay, and he brings down 6 shitos of what kares means that he disagrees with. And one of the stranger ones, and it's not me saying that, it's him saying that, is Tosfos. Okay, there's a Tosfos that says, this is a Bravanel summary. This is in Bamidbar 1531. Hadas arvi zachru gamkein b'tosfos b'makom nizkar v'hu shehakaris yibachin kfi yemei hacholi. You can tell whether someone got kares by the days of sickness. How so? Ki kasher yamus adam biyom hashlishi micholyo yihi nichras me'amo. That when a person dies on the 3rd day of an illness, then that is indicative of kares. Okay, now I don't think he means whenever someone dies on the 3rd day of illness, that means that was kares, but he's saying that that's how you could tell. Let's say the way we ended up learning it is if a person did an avera that's chayav kares and then he gets sick and then dies on the 3rd day, according to Tosfos, that is kares. Okay, so the Bravanel does not like this for many reasons. Okay, but one of the reasons is he says, this is not a good opinion. Okay, whether by way of reason, which he's going to explain now. He's going to go why it doesn't work out the psukim, but we don't care about that right now. Someone who's set to die in his illness, what gain would he get by prolonging his illness? Okay, meaning if he is going to die, obviously if you could get better, then the more alive you are, then the more chance you can get. Vihiu koyamav machovim al mitaso lema'atzava yishkav. That's probably a reference to Eov, if I had to guess. No, Yeshayahu. Okay. That all of his days are going to be in pain on his bed, and he's just going to be lying down in pain. And here's what he says: Halo tov lo shiis my tsaro. Wouldn't it be better if his suffering were diminished? V'chulio, and his illness v'yamus mehira, and he dies quicker. That would be better for him. Tov lo. Kihine lasakin inyane nafsho u'teshuvaso, in order to set your affairs in order of your soul, not your physical affairs, and then to do tshuva, dailo l'shlosha yamim. 3 days is enough. Okay, I'll call you a second, so I just want to read the whole thing. But Mishnah Amra, the Mishnah in Avos says, Shuv yom echad lifnei misasacha. Return, do tshuva 1 day before your death. I think we quoted that also recently. V'hinei chasidei Yisrael u'neviyehem lo herichu yami b'chuliyehem. The most pious Jews and Nevi'im did not prolong their days of illness. Yaakov Avinu Yochiach, Yaakov proves this. Shemiyad keshechala, as soon as he got sick, there's a bunch of midrashim on that, Berach banav, he blessed his sons. V'nemar, and it says, Vaychal Yaakov l'tavos es banav v'yesov raglav el hamita v'yigva v'yasef el mav. Yaakov finished commanding his children, and he gathered in his feet to his bed, and he expired, and he was gathered to his people. V'chein ba'aron of Moshe lo chalu cholayim klal. Moshe and Aaron didn't get sick at all. If yihye imkin onish hakares shebavo ketz adam ve'ez moso TV. How could kares be that when a person's natural time for death comes, yamus liyom hashlishi lemachalasa? How could it be that he dies on day 3 of his illness? V'hu hatovlo, that's good for him. She'efshar lo shi'itzaru banav mitocholio. It's possible that his children would have prolonged suffering because of his illness. Ubasru alav yichav, ubasaru alav yichav. His flesh will be in pain. V'nafsho alav te'avel, and his soul will be in mourning. Okay, so that's his argument. So this is, I don't think you need a raya for this, but in case you say to me, how dare you say that dying quickly could be rachmin, blame it on the Bravanel. Okay, don't blame it on me. He says this. Okay. Oh yeah, Yosef, what was your question?
A little bit confused by the tshuva thing. I was thinking maybe it's giving 3 days because that allows you for a more full process of tshuva, right? The punishment includes an opportunity for tshuva.
Yeah.
So, did he? I was a little bit lost. So, did he say anything on that? Or no?
No, he didn't. I think this is all he said about the tshuva point. Yeah. Okay. So going back to the Rambam here. So I think that at a certain point, I think that, and so you also notice the Rambam says, Mavakish alav rachmin b'birkas cholim kfi tzachos lashona. Now this is another important thing. What's kfi tzachos lashona means? It means according to your own formulation. Now, where else do we see this in Hilchos Tefilah, kfi tzachos lashona? Yeah, that's in the same category though.
Original Tefilah,
right? So if you look at the way the Tefilah originally was, before the Anshe Knesset Hagdol formalized it, so mitzvah to say lihispala b'chol yom, it's mitzvah to say to daven every day. Shneimar, it says v'avadatem es Hashem elokechem, you should serve Hashem your God. Mipi Shmuel amru she'avoda zohi tefilah. It says from Torah Shabbat Peh that this avoda is tefilah. V'nemar l'ovda b'chol levavchem. It says serve him with all your heart. Amru Chachamim, the Chachamim said, Ezo hi avoda shebalev, zo tefilah. The Chachamim said, what is avoda shebalev? That's tefilah. Ve'in minyan tefilos min Torah, the number of tefilos is not from the Torah, meaning 3 times a day, right? V'lo mishneh hatefilah hazos min Torah, the text of the tefilah is not from the Torah. Ve'in letefilah zman kavua min Torah, and there's no set time for tefilah from the Torah. Ulefikach nashim avadim chayavim b'tefilah shehi mitzvah lo hazman grama. Therefore, women and slaves are obligated in tefilah because it's not a time-bound mitzvah. Okay, so then here's where he describes it. Elachiyuv mitzvah kafu. Rather, here's the obligation of the mitzvah. Shehi adam mispala umischanim b'chol yom. Person should pray and supplicate every day, and then say the praises of God, and then ask for his needs, which he needs, which my interpretation is things that he actually needs, not just things that he wants and then says, oh, I need it, right? You ask for it in requesting and supplication. Then you should give praise and thanks to God for the good that he bestowed upon. Okay, I think he does use kfi tzachos lashono elsewhere. Okay, well, he uses different synonyms. Dabra kfi yochlo, he should speak it, articulate it according to his ability. Also kfi yacholto. And he also says, when he's talking about the formulation of tefilah, when they made a standardized nusach, he says that this allows each person to be, here we go, that once they created a standardized text, he says, it allows arufos b'fi kol b'yilamdim osam, so that these tefillos could be arranged in everyone's mouth and they could learn them. V'tiyeh tefillas elah eligim, and the tefillah of these stammerers can be tefillah shlema tefillas bal halashon hatzacha. It could be like the most articulate people. Okay, so according to his own articulateness. So there's no set formula of like, hiraton that you should have a refuah shlema. It's according to your tzachos lashona, which I'm taking to mean that, like the original tefilah, you have to formulate it according to your own understanding, and that's by design, So let me give one more example, and then I'll apply this to the case at hand here. So another example of this, and this is something I made a change for in my tefilah. My grandmother is 97. And she was very healthy physically and mentally up until her early 90s. And then she started getting dementia. And now she's in a state where it's like a pretty advanced dementia, So I used to daven for a refuah shlema for her. I switched to davening for rachamim for her. And the reason why is because at this point, first of all, again, rachamim does not exclude refuah, okay? But at this point, she was and is suffering. And, if you want to look at, again, don't blame this on me, you can look at Pirkei Avos 5:21, where it says the ages, and when it gets to the older ages, then Shivim Laseva, 7 years for old age, then Shemoni L'Gvura, 80 years for might, then Tishim Lashuach, 90 years for stooping over, then Me'ak Ilu Meis Va'avar Ubatal Min Ha'olam. When you're 100, it's as if you're dead and you have passed and been negated from the world. Now, again, this is not every single person. There are people who, are active into their hundreds or whatever, but, it's a thing that if you talk to old people who are that sick, then it's real agony to be alive and in a state of incapacitation, and especially if you have dementia and it's confusing and scary. So I switched in my tefilah for asking for rachamim, not for refuah. So let's go Yosef and then David, yeah?
Could you daven for a refuah to be discovered? I know it's
you can definitely daven for refuah to be discovered, yeah.
And could you put that into a tachonin maybe, to?
Yeah, you can put it in atachon. I think you could even put it in rufeinu, because it's for refuah, Yeah, that's definitely the case, because it's definitely possible that these things can happen. There are miracle drugs. I mean, before penicillin, infection was death. That's it, And I'm not a bucky in the latest research on fungal remedies, but they say that certain research into certain mushrooms can actually regenerate parts of the brain that have been ravaged due to dementia and Alzheimer's. So maybe it's only a matter of time before that can actually be a practical thing. Yeah, David?
Okay, there's several questions from that.
Yeah.
Your understanding when you are mevakesh something in tefilah, better to be more general or more specific?
So that's the trick, right? The trick is to know what's going to be the better tefilah, right?
Okay.
And I don't know if there's an objective answer, right? Because you do want to be as specific as possible, but also not ruling things out as if that this is the thing that is needed, right? If you, problem of, what do you call? It's the best example. I got to go with my jury duty example, right? Of the when I got jury duty, and this is the first and only time I've had jury duty, and then like they didn't finish on the first day, and like I'd come back, and I didn't do the jury selection process, and like I had all these classes to teach, and like this was back in the day when they made you prepare work for all the classes that you're going to be not teaching in high school, so it was like creating a lot of work, and no one was learning, and like everything was falling apart. So I had davened initially like for asking Hashem to get me out of jury duty, right? Actually, I think I recorded this. Hold on, in the blog post. Oops. Yeah. So jury duty. I think I had very specific formulations here. Yeah. I'll just read it. I can write. I said, from a purely subjective standpoint, my wants were clear. Jury duty thus far had been miserable, annoying, and incredibly inconvenient for myself, my students, and my colleagues. The school needed to get other teachers to substitute for the 8 classes I'd be missing, and most of my classes didn't lend themselves to continuing on in the unit without me. I wanted nothing more than to be back in school teaching my students. The simple tefilah would have been to request to get out of jury duty. However, as I thought about how to formulate my request in tefilah, I admitted to myself that the desire to get out of jury duty stemmed largely from selfish desires. I then tried thinking about this in terms of my objective needs and the objective needs of those around me. I found myself confronted with a dilemma. On the one hand, I was needed at school by my students and by my coworkers as a teacher of Torah. On the other hand, I was needed by the American justice system and by the individuals involved in this particular case. This realization was bolstered by my observation of how many unqualified people there were in the jury pool and how my presence as a Talmudically trained, justice-minded thinking juror would have been an asset to all those involved. You would not believe how, pardon my French, dumb some of the people they like could not, and it wasn't an language barrier thing. It was like not being able to follow a simple sentence for the jury selection process. And I'm wondering like, why, okay, fine. So I gave quite some thought as to how to formulate my tefilah to address this conflict, to balance my wants with the demands of objective justice, righteousness, and kindness, but to do so in a manner that would be genuine and wouldn't involve lying to myself and asking for something I didn't truly want. That we've talked about in tefilah shiur, that you have to level up your requests, but they have to be genuine. But it's not going to be an effective tefilah if you're just faking, like asking for something that you're just pretending to want, right? So in the end,
you mean like don't emotionally want? Like let's say you logically want it, but emotionally, like you're conflicted. You
could do that, but there's a certain point where it becomes like fake. And MS. I think there needs to be an MS in your bakasha. So where you draw that line is up to you. So in the end, I'll just finish reading this part here. In the end, I arrived at the following formulation: please help me to be of the greatest service to my fellow human beings. Whether that resulted in me serving on the jury or getting off jury duty and returning to my students. This was a request that I was able to make honestly, which factored in my recognition of my own bias for my selfish perspectives and my lack of knowledge as to which outcome was truly better, right? So there's no direct answer to your question. Is it better to be specific or general, right? So like we don't say shachol niheh bidvaro and everything because that's a bad shevach, right? Same thing with bakasha. It is an immature bakasha just to say Hashem make it better, So you're approaching him as a Tzelem Elokim and formulating like your needs and your requests and your place in the universe, etc. So like you have to ask yourself, what is going to be a tefilah that is most true and developmentally appropriate to me, but like also doesn't limit things or make things feel like it's in my control. Like again, if you say, let's say like, whatever, let's say like there's a surgery that's going to happen, right? And you daven for the surgery to go well, right? So maybe that's good, right? And I'm not saying that that's a bad tefilah, but we know that there are times when surgeries don't go as planned and they find something else, and that ends up being very, very good, So like saying make the surgery go as planned, like I don't know. And again, this is why at the very end of tefilah we say that may the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be in line with God's will. We acknowledge that our tefillahs might not be the best for us, but you just answer your questions. You got to like formulate it the best way you can. And this is the interesting thing. I mean, Chazal formulated all of the brachos and tefillos not kafit tachos lashano. They did their formulations, right? Because that's the best thing. And they could have made it so there was like a drop-down menu or like a made-to-order menu for your own bakashos and say, if you have a chola, you recite this exact formula. Mm-hmm. But they didn't according to the Rambam. They said kafit tachos lashano, So it sounds like there is an intentionally like a leeway there for you to be able to formulate it according to your best understanding.
So it sounds like then within that, you kind of go into a more specific specific what you see fitting, and then you have to like take a little bit of a step out of that, and then say within that step out, like recognize where this specific thing that you were looking at, how that fits into the objective overall whole, and whatever would be the greatest in the overall whole.
Yeah.
And then frame your tefilah as within this framework. I'm looking for the best thing in this framework that could happen.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Yeah, easier said than done, but yeah. Right. So, oh, and I want to point out also in Hilchos, the halachos of Bikkur Cholim. Okay. By the way, where's the Rambam codified Bikkur Cholim?
Chaos.
No. Good guess.
Shoot.
It's in Sefer Shoftim. Yeah, we're in Sefer Shoftim.
The middle.
It's in Hilchos Avel, the laws of mourning. Okay, why? Because at the end he says mitzvos shel dibrehim lavakir cholim ulanachem avelim ulhotia mes ulahachnis hakala. I'm going to bring semi-proof to your intuition. Ulalavos haorchim ulasok b'chol tzorchei hakvura laseis ala kasef leilach lefanav v'lispod v'lachbor v'likbor v'chein l'sameach hachasim v'hakala ulasa adam b'chol tzorcheim. So, all right, the mitzvos derabanan to visit the sick, or check on the sick, literally, to comfort mourners, to escort the dead, to bring in the kala, to escort guests, to be involved in all the needs of burial, to carry the beer on the bier on your shoulder, v'leilach l'fanav, to walk in front of it, v'lispod, and to give a eulogy, v'lachbor, and to dig, v'likbor, and to bury, v'chein l'sameach ha'chazan v'kala, and also to make the chazan and the kala rejoice. Real emotional roller coaster here. L'sadam b'chol tzorcheim, and to supply them with all their needs. These are called the acts of gimlus chasadim that you do with your body that have no measure. Okay, and then he says, here's the raya for your intuition. Even though all these mitzvos are midirabanan, they are still included in the v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Kol hadvarim she'ata rotze she'ye'asu osam lecha. Acherim, all the things that you want others to do for you. Asay osan atal achicha b'torah of mitzvahs. You should do for your brother in Torah and mitzvahs. Yeah, okay. So when he talks about Bikkur Cholim, he says like this. Yeah. Hanichnas levakir as chole. When you go in to visit the chole, lo yeshiv al gabi hamita. Don't sit on the bed. Lo al gabi safsal, not on a bench. Lo al gabi kisei, not on a chair. By the way, these things might have been different back then. I don't know what we hold about this practically. Lo al gabi makom gvo, not on a high place. And not above their head. Ella misatef, rather you should be misatef, which I don't know if that means the talus, or if that means like with a turban, or if that means probably a turban. Yeah. Yeah. V'yoshev lamata mimera shosav, and sit beneath his head level. Umavakish alav rachamim v'yote, and ask for rachamim and leave. Yeah. Okay. So. Quick visit, but be mavakish rachamim. So this is a similar thing here, okay? This is like being mavakish rachamim. Clearly, this is kfi tachas l'shono, even though he doesn't say it. There's no like hamaki minachem eschem like formula. I mean, that's not a formula strictly speaking either. But there's no like formula that you say for comforting, for asking for rachamim for the chole. Okay.
Actually, I think my grandfather said that you're supposed to say hamakom yirachim eschem b'soch sharachal Yisrael.
Oh, that's a good one. Hamakim rachamim. May you God have mercy.
That's what he used to say.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good. All right. I never heard that, but that's a good fits into the Rambam also.
Sorry, Atah, not eschem. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's for rachamim, and then I want to show you one more thing also regarding tefilah shav. This is kind of out of order. Sorry about that. Going back to the question of like asking for I may as well show you the tefilah shav source inside instead of just saying it.
Can I ask a question on the last?
Yeah.
I don't really understand why we would like have these halachos about chola, like not sit above them and not like kind of like the makabit, like give them kavod, it seems like, or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of like we do with an avo, but I don't understand why a chola would, like why that makes sense by a chola.
Yeah. So so some of the considerations, if you look through all the halachos in Bikkur Cholim, some of them have to do with like practical considerations, like not visiting them at certain times because they have like sick needs that they have to take care of. I know what others say about why you can't sit above your head and why you have to be misatef, and I think I mentioned this in Ramam. No, I don't know where I mentioned this recently. This week also. Anyone know what other people say? Why you can't sit above their head?
Like when you're above the head,
Like their head level, your head level can't be above their head level.
Maybe so they don't have to lift their head to look at you.
That's what. So if it's a practical reason, then that's what I was thinking for that. Yeah. So there's a statement in Chazal. I don't know where it is, and I don't know how to find it. That the Shechina is above the head of the Chola. And the pshat I gave of that. This must have been in Rambam Bakios because none of you, none of you are showing glimmers of recognition. I think what I was explaining that my working definition of Shechina is anything that any Hashgachas Hashem, which again Hashgacha process or Hashgacha Klolos, that brings to mind the reality of God. So with someone is sick, both because of your recognition of their mortality and the fact that their life is in God's hands, and the fact that that you realize your dependence on God, brings to mind the idea of the Shechina. That's why the Shechina is above the head of the sick person. And that's also why, again, Rambam doesn't say this. That's why this is a halacha, I think we passing like this. You don't say their name when you daven for them in their presence, because it's like the Shechina is right there. You don't have to like deliver your tefillahs, however that works. Yeah.
So it's like some sort of like covered rosh or looking at Hashem when you're.
Yeah, that's where the covered rosh comes from also. Yeah. Okay, so again, without going through the whole sugya of tefilah shav, hold on here. So the Gemara in Brachos Daf Samach Amud Aleph says, so this is on that Mishnah we just read. Haisa Ishto Uberes v'Amar Yihiratzon Shetela. So when you ask for a male, okay, V'lom Mahani Rachmin. Okay, it's tefilah shav, and therefore Rachmin will not work. Okay, so it's interesting that the Gemara has to say that. Like, it's not just that tefilah shav is an isser, but like if you did it, then it might work. No, it doesn't work. Okay, I don't know why. Meisiv Rabbi Yosef objected. So it says in Breshis Lamed Chavala, the Achar Yalda Bas Vatikra Eshma Dina. So it says, and afterwards Leah gave birth to a daughter and called her name Dina. My the Achar. What is the implication of and afterwards? Amar Rav said La'achar Shadana Leah Din Ba'asma. After Leah judged herself, tefilah. Did that on That's actually a good raya. Okay. V'amra Yud Beis Shvatim Asidin Latzeis Miyakov. 12 tribes are destined to come from Yaakov. Shisha Yatsu Mimeni. 6 came from me. Arba Minashvachos. What? Oh yeah. And 4 from the maidservants. Hari Asaras. That's 10. Im Ze Zachar. If the fetus that I'm pregnant with is male, Lote Achosi Rachel Achas Shvachos. So then Rachel, who was only going to get 1, is not even going to be equal to one of the Shvachos. Miyad nehevcha labas. So immediately the fetus transformed into a daughter. Shnemar v'tikra eshemah dina. Okay, so he's saying basically, well, you see that you can change the fetus, right?
This was before she was Uber.
If you have the power for him to do a miracle for you, because it's like you're on that level.
So those are the 2 answers given. Okay, so those are the 2 answers given. So one answer is Amos Kirin Maisa Nisim. We don't rely on miraculous cases. Okay, meaning to determine halacha. Meaning, fine, they got a miracle there. Okay, whatever. Okay. V'bais ema ma'ase delea besof arbaim yomhu. So the incident of Leah was in 40 days, as was taught in a brisa. Shloshi yamim harishonim yivakish adam rachmim shlo yasriach. So for the first 3 days, I guess after the act of bia, probably, then a person should ask for rachmim that the seed not go bad. V'shlosh vad arbaim from 3 to 40 days. Yivakish rachmim shehei zachar. You should ask for mercy that the baby be a male. From 40 days to 3 months, sandal. You should ask there not be a sandal, which is like a stillbirth that is like misshapen, like it looks like a lump of leather. Stillborn basically. From 3 months until 6 months, then that's like a full stillborn, where it's like an actual like baby that died. Mishisha va'atisha from 6 to 9. Yivakish rachim sheyetze b'shalom. You should ask for mercy that it should emerge in peace, meaning it should be a good birth. Yeah, you want to ask something, Joseph?
Yeah, maybe like by Leah, it's actually, you could say there's a different hashgacha there because she's one of the imos.
Yeah, we're gonna see that answer. We're gonna see that answer too.
She's she's one of the imos, so therefore you have Clolius.
Right. So that's what that's along the lines that Isaiah was saying, that it's really for all of Klal Yisrael, not for her in particular. Okay, so by the way, just factually speaking, I don't think we say that this is true anymore. That from 3 to 40 days it can still change gender. I don't think that's
I think it only shows up. I'll check.
well, shows up is one thing, right? But when does it actually get determined? I'm not sure.
It's for Y chromosome.
That's conception, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, last time I looked at this up, that's what it was. Okay. Umi mahani rachamim. So here's the Gemara says, does tefilah really work? So this seems like a good raya, right? That Leah davened and it changed. Okay. But the only reason why she did it is because why she could do it is it was in that change period. Okay. Umi mahani rachamim. Does tefilah really work to change the fetus? V'hamar Rabbi Yitzchak b'rei Rav Ami, whatever. Ish mazriya tchila yoledas nekeva. Okay, this is another outdated theory.
Yeah.
If the man sows first, okay, in the act of bia, then the woman gives birth to a female. If isha mazras tchila yoledas zachar. If the woman sows first, she gives birth to a female. Shemar isha ki sazriya yolda zachar. What?
Yoledas zachar.
Oh yeah, thank you. To be male. All right, fine. I'll change it after. Okay, so then, so now it's saying it doesn't sound like there's a grace period, right? It sounds like in the actual act of bia, then it's determined like right away. So when does the case work for tefilah? When it's simultaneous. So it's still trying to go with, it's trying to go with like that there is the takeaway here is that tefilah only works to change the gender if it's like at exactly a point or a period where it could be changed. Yeah.
But what if you were in a case in which you wanted to have a female to fulfill or something like that?
So it'd be the same laws about what you are and are not allowed to daven for. Like,
Okay.
yeah. And you're totally, just to be clear, you're totally allowed to daven before the pregnancy, right? Just not after she's already pregnant. Yeah, David?
Within this, I forgot what the answer I was going to be asking, but within the second answer, this is going to be like a larger or whatever the. Can I hold up on my question?
Yes. Yeah, Yosef?
We do see though, like by the case I said before, like by the storage of the seeds, right?
Yeah.
Like
the seeds is another case where like basically after you've harvested, you're allowed to say a tefilah before you measure it, but then after you measure it, then you're not allowed to do it. So that's kind of weird also. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm asking is that like it seems like even when there's just like unclarity, right? Like when you just don't know, there seems to be a possibility of tefilah. So but by conception, maybe it seems like, well, just like how by your storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
There might be that you're asking for something that's already determined, right? You just don't know it yet, right? It's like Schrodinger's tefilah, right? So like, so maybe say by a child as well, that could work, right? Because there's no way to check.
Right. The problem though is you also don't know whose house is on fire, right? And I'm not saying that it's an insurmountable problem, but that's the case where you hear an outcry and you don't know who it is. So there's uncertainty, but you're still not allowed to daven and say this may this not be from my house. So you have to reconcile the two cases of the pile of grain and this. Okay, so let's go on to the explanation of the Gemara. Okay, and this is going to get to the practicality of it. Now, this is according to the Bechor Shor. Okay, this is the best explanation I found in the Rishonim. Okay, Bechor Shor is one of the Bali Tos was. V'hashta akati kasha. Okay, this is still difficult. He says. Okay, amai hava tefilah shav. Why is it a tefilah shav? Okay, in other words, to daven for the gender change. Hari humis palo shiase lo gam kein nes. You're davening for a miracle to be done. We hold by miracles, right? Just like what happened to Rachel and Leah. So the guy who davens for a miracle is a tefilah shav. Yeah.
The Gemara that we quoted in Brachos like goes on to talk about a miracle for a Yachid versus a Raleigh.
Okay, so he's raising the question now, right? So apparently this is a question now. He couldn't wait. All right, the Efshar l'chalik. So you can differentiate. Devadai Yachid. Lo yispala ahanes. An individual may certainly not daven for a miracle. Okay. Deman yemar dechazile. Who is to say that he's worthy of a miracle? About im mispalo shalarabim yease nisim. But if he davens that a miracle should be done on behalf of the many, kenusach harachman yase lanu nisim. Like when you say harachman yase lanu nisim. I don't know when we say that. Shop your donkey. That's fine. When we do say it though. We in all nisim, yeah, everyone except for Ashkenazim who don't follow, the whole shiur on Al Hanis, and they can listen to. So you can definitely daven for a miracle for the masses. Okay, we must also differentiate. I'll summarize at the end. Nisim shel teva ha'olam, shemilchamos chashmonaim, like the wars of the chashmonaim, meaning that was like a natural miracle, so to speak. Mashresh hayunisim derech teva ha'olam. Okay, that's miracles done in a natural manner. So it was miraculous. It was the Rabbi being defeated by the Me'atim, but not Kriyas Yamsuf, right? But if you daven for a female to be transformed into a male, who nes shelo derech hateva ha'olam klal. That's not done in a natural manner at all. What? V'kiyotze b'zeh hu tefilah shav. And if you daven like that, for a miracle like that, that would be a tefilah shav. And you need to be careful to not daven that a miracle be done for him which is outside of the natural manner. Ve'ein raya me Rabbi Chanina Bardosa Kira based bias tefilah. Oh yeah, I was preparing this hastily. This is from when I was teaching in high school, so I didn't get a chance to fill in the thing. You can look that up. I don't know what the reference is. So in these cases, the Rav Guvre.
Like Vader's Sunday story.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, the miracle stories, right?
Oh, it was the beams.
Yeah.
It was the story of the beams. The lady's beams her house didn't fit like her house.
Oh yeah.
She prayed on behalf of them.
Yeah.
There's a machloek about what exactly happened, whether they got bigger or like they connected somehow.
Yeah. Okay, good. So you know the story. So I assume that was an open miracle.
Yeah.
Right. So he says he's different to Rav Guver. He was a great man. His power is great, literally. Umasav al derech v'tigzor omer v'yakam lach. And that is in accordance with the matter of you decree a matter and it will be established for you. So that's like all the tzaddikim in Chumash who daven for miracles, and it happened. Okay. So here's a summary, apparently, that I put in the PowerPoint. Let's see if this is a good summary. So the halacha is you may not daven to change the gender of a fetus. Question: why can't we daven to change the gender of a fetus? Leah did. Answer 1, Dina's transformation was a miracle and we don't rely on miracles. Answer 2, meaning we don't rely on miracles to set the precedent for halacha. Answer 2, Dina's transformation was not a miracle because Leah davened within 40 days of becoming pregnant when the fetus can still change. Okay, sub-question. Isn't the gender determined by who sows first? Answer, tefilah can only work when both sow simultaneously. Okay. Then B'chor Shor says this is still difficult. Why can't a person daven for a miracle? Okay, answer 1, you cannot daven for a personal miracle since you may not be worthy, but you can daven for a miracle for the many because Zechus Rabim, Hashgacha on Klal Yisrael, Zechus Avos, a lot of avenues of miracle for the masses. Tzibor, Hashgacha on the Tzibor, Tefillas Rabim. Okay, answer number 2 is the miracles a person may only daven. No, that's not a real sentence. The miracles a person may only daven for a natural miracle. Okay, let me get this straight again. Person may only daven for a natural miracle, i.e. one that does not involve an overt violation of the laws of nature, but not for a supernatural miracle. Okay, question, what about Rabbi Mendoza? He davened for a supernatural miracle. Answer is his case is different because he was a great man and he was worthy.
Leah also.
And Leah also, presumably that would be the case. Yeah. He didn't tie it back to Leah, but that was the whole thing he was commenting on. Yeah.
Okay, so then say for we ours.
Oh, sorry. So I'm just saying, and I think that fits into the Gemara's first answer that Dina's transformation was a miracle, and Leah was permitted to do that, which apparently fine, yeah. So yeah, David.
Yeah. So within this, and say for ourselves, would it then be okay to be in Klal that something happens to one of us personally that does have an effect on Klal Yisrael as a whole?
That's interesting. You could presumably do that, yeah. If it's for the Robin, that's a nice little cheat code, you know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's possible, yeah.
Okay, and somebody then you could also ask for a miracle in that way. Then.
Sounds like it. I mean, I'm not poskening, but it sounds like according to what he's what the B'chor Shor is saying, then you could do that. Yeah. Okay, so now the question is, let's go back to our issue of save. Tefilas shav. Where were we here? Oh yeah. So the question is, when you are davening for someone who's sick, right? So my case of the miraculously regenerating arm, that would clearly be usher to daven for, right? If you get your arm cut off, you cannot ask for your arm to miraculously grow back, okay? If someone has a terminal illness, then there is such a thing as miraculous cures, right? But there's going to be a limit to that also, right? Like, you know, I don't know what that limit is, and you probably have to understand the medical realities of it, you know, in order to know that. But and that's where you have the line of tefilah shav and not tefilah shav, where, like, you know, I would again advocate. This is my second reason for why you should daven for rachamim, is because rachamim is either refuah or alleviation of suffering, or these other things, you know. So I think that if you're, again, this is not psak, this is just like tefilah formulation advice, that if you're mesupik about whether or not you'd be going into tefilah shav territory, daven for rachamim, you know, and don't daven for refuah shlema, because if it is impossible without a miracle, a supernatural miracle, then you're doing a tefilah that's usher and it won't be answered, you know. So davening for rachamim is better. Quick plug here. So the best article I've read on tefilah shav, and I might have talked about this in tefilah before, is this article by Ari Bleischer, Olav Shalom. So Ari Bleischer was a Talmid of Ar Yeshiva, Marcy's husband, and he wrote this article, Tefilah Shav, The Limits of Prayer as a Means to Understanding of Transformative Nature. And you can see in the footnote here, the ideas in this article are not just theoretical for me. I began to delve into this area after being diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor. As I shall elaborate below, not only is the structure of prayer itself a source for inspiration and transformation, but the foundational ideas upon which that structure is based are equally inspiring and transformative. And I believe, I might have gotten the details wrong, but it was something like that he was a radiologist, and like there you go. I think he diagnosed his own tumor. I think that they said that it was not malignant or whatever, and like he was able to see, and like, you know, and they got it, you know, they got more of a jump on it. He did succumb to the tumor, but I want to read. So I highly recommend reading this article. This is in Chakira. Again, if you don't know what Chakira is, then you're missing out. Chakira is the Flatbush Journal of Jewish Law and Thought. All of the articles by all these Talmidei Chachamim are including some of ours, like Rabbi Zucker. These are all available for free except the current issue. So like all of these articles, this is a good summer reading for Shabbos. Okay, tons of great articles on a bunch of interesting topics. Okay, anyway, so I just want to skip to the end. I'm not going to spoil any of the article, but just at the very end, when he summarizes like what we take away for tefillah, he says, if a person consistently reminds himself that kol ma da'avid rahman latav avid, that everything that God does is for the good, everything that the merciful one does is for the good, he will always maintain a correct perspective towards his situation. He will not veer too far from reality, exaggerating neither his fears nor his accomplishments. He will recognize at all times his capacity, his limitations, and the gap between them where God bestows his blessings. This is precisely where it is appropriate for man to express gratitude for the past and pray for the future. As a result of the above analysis, one can easily infer that self-assessment is not just a prerequisite for prayer, i.e. a needed step in order to determine whether a situation is changeable, thus making tefillah worthwhile, or whether a situation is fixed, thus rendering the tefillah as being shav. Rather, self-assessment is inherently part of tefillah, as we said on Tuesday, as the first step in addressing the Creator. This assessment from man's perspective is absolutely necessary in order to specify his own place on the continuum from powerless to powerful, and it allows him to identify his needs. Without this recognition, man's prayer, and indeed his entire vantage point in life, lacks perspective and meaning. So that's like tefillah in general, and seeing the halachos of tefillah shav means that this is not just like Rabbi Mann once said, that if you look at how a lot of, not just Jews, you look at a lot of how religious people, what their davening is like, it's virtually no different than closing their eyes and making a wish on the birthday cake, you know? Like, that's like an infantile idea of tefillah as like making wishes that will magically come true. But real tefillah is to recognize that you're utterly dependent on God, and it's all in his hands, and seeing what your place is in reality. So now bringing this back to the situation at hand. So, I have been davening for a refuah shlema for Rabbi Moskowitz. Again, I don't know, his kidneys have failed, and he is now you can't survive off of dialysis. You can't survive without kidneys. So it does seem like, it's only going to be a matter of a short amount of time. So I, at this point, am switching to davening for rachamim. And rachamim, again, is to me, the lack of specificity, I think is the correct formulation. I mean, there are plenty of things that could be rachamim, that his suffering is eased, that rachamim Rabbi Moskowitz could also have to do with Mrs. Moskowitz, that she is able to, maintain whatever state of mind that she needs to maintain and provide him with the comfort that is needed. Rachamim also has to do with the fact that Rabbi Moskowitz is a Talmid Chacham, and that his passing should be at a time when he can receive the kavod Torah that he deserves, and that people can be menachem Avel, in the time that is proper. But I think it really should be rachamim at this point. Yeah, Yosef.
Because he's a Talmid Chacham, though, could you maybe say, because he's like a leader in Klal Yisrael, maybe say that you could daven for an ace in that situation? I mean, I don't know. But
so yeah, you could say that. I mean, here's the thing. This is why I was hesitant when you asked me, David. He doesn't say that he doesn't say you could daven for something that will benefit the rabbim. He's saying a miracle for the rabbim, right? Like, so saying that an individual who's very important to Klal Yisrael, I mean, yeah, that does affect the rabbim. I feel like that opens a door. Like, again, like you have that case of the Rambam in the Hakdama to the Perush Mishnayos about the guy who, it could be that God gives wealth to a certain person, so that he, this wealthy person builds a whole huge mansion, so that one day a Talmid Chacham who's walking along can like sit in the shade of the mansion and like think about an idea, and that's going to benefit all of Klal Yisrael. Like, so like I can daven for a miracle to get a mansion, like, I just don't know, that's the honest answer. Now, here's the thing. I'm in this this chat where we get these updates from Mrs. Moskowitz about the situation, and there's a lot of people in the chat from all over the place, and obviously a lot of people are talking about saying Tehillim, and so there's non-problematic ways, good ways to say Tehillim for the sick, and there's problematic ways. And again, I have a whole article about, what is it called? How to say Tehillim for the sick without violating halacha. No, that's how to say Tehillim for the sick without violating halacha. Okay, so I go through all the shitos there, okay, that I know of. All right, so you can look there for details. But I wanted to read just the basic thing, which is from the Sefer Chinuch, about how saying Tehillim works, okay? And the question I had when I saw people in the chat saying like, they're still going to continue to say Tehillim, right? So I want to, again, I'm not saying this to the people, like, I don't know where they're holding, but like, what would be the idea of saying Tehillim, okay, if you are saying Tehillim, okay? So the Sefer Chinuch in the midst of Chover Chaver, which is the prohibition against saying incantations, which he defines as, so he says, you can't make incantations about any matter. And what is this defined as? Adam devarim, that a person says words, and tells people, and he tells people that these words will help or harm in any matter. That's the Isser Chover, okay? According to Sefer Chinuch. Like, some people hold this davka, saying like incantations in nonsense languages. He says it's words, okay? And because he says it's words, then he says, maybe my son, you will ask me a kushya, the ha de garsinam b'shavuos perak yedios hatuma, shir shapagayim b'kinoros of navalim, the omer yosh b'seser ad ki atam Hashem machsi, the omer ma rabu tsarai ad ki lashem ha-Yeshua. So there's a Gemara in which Gemara is this? Yeah, is it Shavuos? Yeah, Shavuos. Shir Shapagayim, so the song of afflictions, Bekinos of Navalim, V'omer Yoshe B'Seser Elyon. So that's Tehillim 91. So it prescribes different Tehillim for different reasons, and one of them is Pagayim, is like afflictions, Upirs Pagayim, Klomer She'amiras Elom is more Toil L'Shamar Min Nazikin. It sounds like these Tehillim can protect you from harm. Okay, right? So V'amr B'Brachos, so it says in Brachos, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who was the one who said, Masadr Lahu Lahai Kroi Vagani. So it says he would say these Parakim of Tehillim and he would be protected. Okay, and this is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who is the same one who said, did he quote him earlier? Oh no, so Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is the one who says Also the rapos b'divrei Torah. It's also to heal yourself with words of Torah. Okay, so the same Yeshua ben Levi. So the one who's saying the Isser to heal yourself with words of Torah is also the one who says this statement about these Tehillim. Yeah, Yosef?
It doesn't say that he's incanting it though, right? Like he's not like it doesn't say that. It just says that he said them. Right?
Okay, well, Sefer Chino thinks this is a question. All right.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I'm just trying to. I'm trying to figure out the Havamina. You know.
Yeah, right. The Havamina is that he says that this Tehillim is for this circumstance, which presumably means you say it. And it says that he would. Well, Masadr who also, I think Masadr means to recite it, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. The Eina Davar Chalila Domel Eina Chover Chaver Shizachana. So his answer is Chas v'Shalom that this is similar to Chover Chaver, to saying incantations. The Kvar Amru Zichron Livracha Zeh al Zeh. So the Chazal say again. I think this is Yeshua ben Levi says Asur lehis rabos b'divrei Torah. It's asur to heal yourself with divrei Torah. While he's kiru lomar mizmorim elu, but he mentioned to say these mizmorim. Why? Now here's the key phrase: Sheish behem devarim yo'oreru nefesh hayodea osam lachasos b'Hashem yisbarach ulahasim bo kol mivtacho. That it contains statements, that arouse the soul that knows them to take refuge in Hashem and to place in him all of his trust. Uvlikboa bilvavo yiraso, and to instill yiras Hashem, fear of God, in his heart, v'lismoch al chasta v'tuva, and to rely on his kindness and his goodness. Umitochis orus al zeh, and due to this inspiration from knowing these words and saying them and trusting in God, nishmar bli safek mikol nezek, he will be protected without a doubt from all harm. Okay, now whether you say he'll be protected without a doubt from all harm means that there will be a hashgacha on him that gives him protection, or whether you say it means that he's basically reminding himself about what actual harm is, and he's not going to get harmed, you know, in the same way that David Melech says, Ma'yaseh li Adam. I know I always forget the first half of this pasuk. In Kufir Ches, in Halal. We had to listen to last time too, right? Ma'yaseh li Adam. Yeah.
Adon Shem Lev Lo Yira Ma'yaseh li Adam.
Yeah, thank you. Wait, start again. Hashem li lo yira, right? Hashem is with me, I shall not fear. What can a person do to me, right? So we said a person can do a lot of stuff to you, right? But no one can actually harm you, because real harm is not going to be in the harm to your body or harm to your possessions. Real harm will be harm to your soul, and no one can make you harm except by making you evil. And the only one who can do that is you. Yeah. So the point is there a way to say Tehillim at this point for, let's say, someone in Rabbi Moskowitz's position? Well, definitely, if you're going to say it for refuah, you run into several problems. You run into the problem that we just said about tefilah shav, possibly, and also l'rapos b'divrei Torah, right? But you may certainly say Tehillim and know what you're saying, right? To inspire your soul to trust in Hashem and to have yiras Hashem and have this is not an exhaustive list, by the way. Avas Hashem, perspective, truth, gratitude, shevach, all that good stuff, And
It sounds like tefilah.
And it is a way of tefilah. And in fact, the Rambam does say, it's interesting. Like, the only other place I can think of in Sefer Ava where the Rambam talks about, I got to use the new fancy one, where the Rambam talks about. Kvitzachos Lashono is at the end of Brachos Perek Yud, where he says, after going through all the miscellaneous brachos, he says, Klalo shel davar, the sum of the matter is La'olam yitzak Adam al ha'asid lavo vivakesh rachamim. A person should always cry out for the future and ask for mercy. V'yitin hodaya al sha'avar, and give thanks to what is in the past, v'yodev yishabech, and then give thanks and praise kfi koko, according to his capacity, which again means like in his own language. And the more you praise Hashem, thank Hashem and praise Him constantly, then the more praiseworthy. So if you're using the Tehillim as tefilah in a permissible way, which means not for a refuah, right? That's the case that's problematic, unless you use one of the 6 heterim or 7 heterim that I listed in the blog post, or if you have your own heter, so then it would be problematic. But all other like using the words of tefilah for shevach b'kashan hodah seem to be fine. In fact, you're using the best words possible. It's David. Yeah, Isaiah?
Would there be a way to tie the saying of the Tehillim into the fact that there's like a chola that you care about, or is that?
Yeah, so that's Rebbe's psak. Rebbe's psak is the recitation. This is my summary. This is not his words. The recitation of Tehillim for healing is only prohibited if only Tehillim and or other psukim are recited. But if one adds a tefilah like a Misha Berach before or after the Tehillim, then this is permissible, since in this case one is using the tefilah as a vehicle of beseeching God, as opposed to relying on the words of Tehillim themselves. You're always allowed to daven. So if you use like Tehillim to supercharge your davening by giving you bitachon and yira and kavana, and then you say Misha Berach, then that's totally fine. So that's how Rebbe
Saying
Moskowitz.
that as a head for saying Tehillim for healing, but we're saying we're not saying Tehillim for healing because.
Right, but I'm saying, like, if you want it, you asked it, can you incorporate the Tehillim in a way that incorporates the chola? This is that. Yeah, David.
Can I ask, like, cheat sheet, like, actually how you yourself formulate the tefilah or whatever for Rahamim now? So I can write about this case.
Please Hashem grant Rachamim to Rabbi Moskowitz. I'm not more eloquent than that. yeah. That's how I'm doing it. Yeah. So that is that's what I have to say on that. And it's these times like that. This is what tefillah's for. And because next week is unpredictable. I do want to say I don't know whether we should end Tehillim 122 here. I know we didn't go through all of it, but basically the idea that we said for Tehillim 122 last time that we just theorized, I think is on the right track, which is that the Meiri said, I'm just going to summarize it now just in case I can't give shiur next week, that the first half of Tehillim 122 is Daven HaMelech talking about Yerushalayim and how great it is. And then in the second half is he's asking for peace over Yerushalayim. Now, we learned it. I think you, David, had a theory. Yes, David. First half is describing the ideal Jerusalem. Second half is asking to bring it about. Yosef said, So Yosef, I think your idea ends up being correct. Oh, Yosef Solveig, sorry. Yeah, right. I'm not used to there being multiple Yosefs in this or any shiur. So the Meiri is the one who said that the first half of Tehillim, where David is saying like, oh, I was happy when I said I could run to the base of Mikdash. That's when he thought that he was going to build the base of Mikdash. And then Nasan Hanavi informed him he can't do it. Now, a person who is not perfected would say, okay, screw this, like that's it. I can't do it, so I know. But no, David realizes there's still something he can do, which is he can daven for the situation in his malchus to be set up so that it will lend itself for Shlomo to Shlomo building it. And he does that by asking for there to be peace in Yerushalayim, because if there's still wars going on, it's going to be difficult for Shlomo, and that there be peace for his brothers and comrades, and that they recognize the goodness of Yerushalayim, so that this next generation sets up a society in which Shlomo will be able to build it. So the moral of the story for Yerushalayim, the moral of the story is like, okay, for David, the moral of the story is this is how he davened for Yerushalayim, even though he couldn't build it. For Bnei Galos, it's more about us asking for the means of peace now so that we could go back to the rebuilt Yerushalayim. But the takeaway we had for tefilah, which we said last time, is, when you daven for plan A, you don't always get the plan A, but then you got to daven for a plan B, and there's still good. Good is not an all or nothing thing. All or nothing is like Rabbi Moskowitz always says, the emotions can't distinguish quantity. Okay. Emotions deal only the emotions deal in absolutes. And so realizing that, like, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, that the perfect would be to get a refuah, right? But if you can't get a refuah, you daven for rachamim, and there are many other ways that there can be good brought about for that situation, And so I think that's like the takeaway, that you don't get locked into a certain idea of how you want God to answer your tefillos, because first of all, who's to say that you can determine how things should go? And there are many, God is he's the one who invented goodness. So like he knows how to bring about the good. He's hatov hametiv. Of course he can bring about goodness in ways that are beyond your understanding. And there's still a lot of ways. You just have to be mispal for that. Yeah. Okay. So that is that. All right. So we'll see what happens in the future. The future is unknown.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.